And we begin tonight's program with Donald Falk from the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, one of San Francisco's leading developers of affordable housing, and that is becoming a rare and rare commodity in this city, isn't it?
It is the least affordable of cities.
The least affordable of cities, but you are managing to be actually you're the number one developer of affordable housing.
I might not say it exactly that way, but of the nonprofit groups who own and operate in San Francisco, we are among the largest, if not the largest.
And you have a great project going on Polk Street in Geary.
With Citizens Housing, we're developing 110 units for seniors, including 50 who are formerly homeless.
Tell me about this deal on Mission Street. This is what it got my intrigue when I read about it. You worked with Crescent.
With Crescent Heights, that's right.
And you worked. This is a huge, complicated project.
This was close to 10 years in the making, and in some ways in the failure of it. Bank of America did a bargain sale, which is kind of a charitable contribution to TNDC and our partner, Citizens Housing, of a 2-acre site at 10th and Market. And we joined with the city and the redevelopment agency and a developer named Jack Myers to try to develop a municipal office building, a new city office building for the overflow of city workers, because they lease a lot of space now, and affordable housing. And we worked many, many years on that, and eventually we were not able to put it together. The city decided instead to acquire an existing building and renovate it, because that cost a lot less.
But you sold some parcels.
So as a result of the municipal office building falling apart, we subdivided it and we sold the 10th and Market portion to Crescent Heights, which is proposing some 700 units. We're not literally a part of that project, but we retain the 10th and Mission site, where we intend to build family or senior housing with citizens.
In other words, the property you sold is now going to basically give you the land free and clear.
That's right.
You can do the development project.
That's right.
So this is the world of an affordable housing developer.
This is a very unusual deal, and a very wonderful sort of the way the circumstances ultimately worked out is it's very rare to find a corporation, essentially, who will sell land at below market value. Typically, when we do our thing, we're out there competing on the open market, just like any other investor, buying land and there's no charitable element involved, except that we promise in perpetuity to rent it to low-income people at affordable rents.
So how do you make deals when this is the most expensive ground in the country?
You know, the fundamental element of every project we do is that the Mayor's Office of Housing or the redevelopment agency makes a deferred loan, meaning it's a loan, but we don't have to pay it back as long as we hold to the promise to rent it to low-income households. And so it looks like a grant, as long as we're operating the way we're supposed to, but if we don't behave properly, then they can make the loan due and payable.
Where do they get their money, the city and county?
A variety of places, including HUD for a portion of it, but the San Francisco taxpayers have stepped forward with a proposition a few years ago to make local money available. There's something called tax increment financing involved with redevelopment districts where the redevelopment agency gets money. Some senior housing money comes from the hotel tax. All of it is a mishmash of funds.
Have any corporations or banks stepped forward? I know they have to do community reinvestment. They're required by law.
Yeah.
Are any of our local banks creating these kinds of funds? I thought remember I had Mr. Greenwald from A.F. Evans on.
Yes.
And I thought he mentioned that he was beginning to work out deals with banks. They'll take a lesser interest rate for blah, blah, this or that. Are you doing that sort of thing as well?
Not exactly. I mean, we get charitable support from a lot of local banks, and it's a wonderful thing. In terms of the deals, the development deals, we may get a little bit better interest rate. The big thing that they do, they are complying with the Community Reinvestment Act, and so they want to invest in certain areas like San Francisco, like the Tenderloin, and they will be more likely to work with a group that they perceive to be lower risk, one with a track record. And the big ticket item for corporations in the United States is the federal low-income housing tax credit. And so that is, they make money, there's a real rate of return. It doesn't look like it. TNDC, for example, controls most of our buildings, but most of our buildings, 99.99% of them, are owned by private investors. That's the deal.
Even your buildings, you mean?
Technically speaking, our buildings, we run them, we control them, they're affordable housing. When their tax benefits run out in 10 years or 15 years, we buy them back for basically no cash.
Now the tax credits, in other words, you put together partnerships and they get the tax benefits.
That's right.
You
and we take the money, so they put in money
right.
for the tax benefits. They get the benefits for 10 years of write-offs. We use the money to develop.
So are we as a city, with innovative thinking and innovative leaders like yourself and your group, are we meeting the demand? Are there enough developers, nonprofit developers or affordable housing developers, to meet the demand for those who are truly needy?
There's not enough developers, there's not enough capital, and arguably there's not enough land. It's very, very difficult in San Francisco to put together projects. They're very expensive, there's a lot at stake, the entitlement process is difficult. Anytime we work with public money, there's, justifiably there are a lot of strings attached because the public needs to be assured that we're spending it responsibly. It becomes a typical development project takes 5 years.
Sure.
And
I had
it's
our
very
Magnus
difficult.
on 2 weeks ago, and he's become a receiver for the Public Housing Authority.
Yes.
And I told him, or asked him on the program, I said, I'm going to have Don Falk on. They have 2/3. They have 1/3 of the number of residents you have, or the housing authority has, with this huge bureaucracy where people can't be fired. I do not understand, if we have such great affordable housing developers and managers like your group, why they don't just take all that bureaucracy. There must be so many millions and millions of dollars wasted each year. We know it's not run, and just contract it out.
We're different animals.
Why is that?
A number of reasons. The housing authority, TNDC, 80% of TNDC's residents earn less than $1,000 a year. Most are on disability or some kind of public assistance. And the housing authority's residents, by and large, are even lower income. So that plays into it. They also have to operate according to a whole HUD-related system that must be a nightmare. I don't envy them for having.
You don't have to? Even with the grants?
We deal with HUD, but it's a whole different system. It really is a different system.
How is that different? How, for our viewers, for example, I'm going to just set up for our viewers, we're talking about public housing at some of our developments around the San Francisco area, and we're talking about what you do, which seems to be the same thing.
In many, many ways it is. One difference would be that we income certify people once a year, and we charge a certain amount of rent. The housing authority charges 30% of people's income in rent, and when their income changes, they have to go through and they verify it even during the course of the year. So there's a lot more staff hours and paperwork involved in the way that they work with tenants and their rents. I mean, I'm a big believer in nonprofit affordable housing, and part of it is we are right there. Our office is at Taylor and Eddy. We are in the mix, and when tenants have an issue with us, they see us on the streets walking to work. They know where we live. We really have a more direct relationship, I think, than a public sector owner.
Do you think that time's coming, though? I mean, look at the complete catastrophe that we're talking about here. The stories we hear. Do you think that with the attitude in Washington where they're cutting back seriously, and I think a Democratic Congress is going to do the same thing, there's not many lobbyists for the poor, right?
No, that is right.
So do you think that they're going to be forced to become creative and think about possibly ways where you might enter that world? You may have to get different staff, you may have to have a different model or even a different group, but that they're going to have to not rely on a bureaucracy to solve the most needy's problems.
I'm not seeing it so much as an either or, because I think the housing authorities, the public housing authorities in the country, by and large, do a very good job. They have a bad image. They are disparaged widely.
Yes, they are.
However, by and large, they do incredible work, and they operate in really difficult circumstances in terms of the regulations that Congress puts on them. I don't think that simply saying, here, you nonprofits, you now do it, I don't know that that's the magic.
How do you handle crime and security?
It's a really big issue. It's probably the biggest issue for us in terms of how we design and operate our buildings, and yet we ourselves are very challenged by it. and even more so for us in the Tenderloin
Yeah.
for what happens outside our buildings.
Yeah.
A typical building of ours might have 100 units, be 6 or 8 floors. We'll have 30 to 40 cameras in it. And that is, it's not a matter of being intrusive, it's a matter that when a resident walks through the door, we want them to feel like they're leaving the Tenderloin on the outside and they are entering a home, a community where it feels safe and secure.
And how do you handle the whole world of property management, leaky pipes and so on? Do you have to have a big staff?
We employ over 200 people, most of them in our property management group. It is really hard work.
Yes,
it's hard, especially in the Tenderloin. Property management is hard everywhere.
Did you start this company?
No, I have been with TNDC since 1994, so I've been there a while. But
Wow.
TNDC started in the early 80s, really as an anti-gentrification movement, because the Tenderloin is located right next to Union Square and Civic Center, and there was, at the time, it was zoned the same as the financial district. So there was a real fear that low-income people would be displaced. You bring up safety. I think that there is an evolving feeling. I mean, now that we have not just TNDC, there are 11 groups that own and operate affordable housing in the Tenderloin. Now that we have succeeded to a great extent in building affordable housing in the Tenderloin, I think there's an equal focus now on quality of life, which means safety and drugs and pedestrian safety.
Do you get along with the other developers of apartment buildings?
Very well. Very well, yeah. We're all stakeholders and we're all looking for the same thing.
Do you work with the Residential Builders Association?
You know, we don't. I know them, but we haven't had a reason to come together.
I don't understand why that link hasn't been made.
You know, maybe if
Joe Cassidy is trying to do innovative things. They have a new director.
Yeah.
They're talking about being more creative and so on. It seems like it would be a natural semiotic relation between the both.
Yeah, I agree. And more generally, between private developers and nonprofit developers, I'm a big believer. A lot of us are in that, especially with the changes in the inclusionary housing rules. It's created incentives on both sides. There are real reasons
you see
to
that
come together.
Do you see any signs of that happening?
Yeah, I do. There are a lot of I'm talking on Friday with a big private developer and Art Evans group about, is there a way that we can work together, because they need to develop 200 units of affordable housing. They don't really want to just write a check to the Mayor's Office of Housing. We have that expertise.
And they have resources as well to bring down the cost.
You know, I would like to think that that's
Let's
true.
hope that does happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last thing, and I hope we have some time for it. I've had a pet peeve of the fact that the mayor talks about. I know it looks like we're not going to have enough. I'm going to have you back. We're going to talk about supportive housing. Supportive housing, as I define it, I think what you guys are doing are a supportive light, which is a very important group of people that need some care, some counseling and care. But for the truly chronic homeless, the people who've been out for 10 years and are just not with us, I'd like to see some way that people finally get down to building that kind of housing.
And that is happening in San Francisco.
All right. Well, then let's do this. We'll have you back and we'll talk about that. And we'll take it up from there.
That's great.
Don
Thank
Falk,
you so
thanks
much.
for being with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.